Good afternoon, everyone. I, Shashank, on behalf of NEN and Vadhani Foundation, would like to invite you all for this webinar and also introduce our expert. Mr. Siddhartha Jain leads a tribe of game makers at Spice Labs, whose mobile games currently reach more than 5 million people every month. At Spice Labs, as the CEO and chief gamer, he has created a creative team to drive the idea engine, an engineering team to deliver and realize these ideas, backed by an amazing operations group to engage and entertain millions of users daily. Before Spice Labs, Siddhartha had worked with multiple technology startups in business, product, and engineering roles. Before I hand over the floor to Siddhartha, here are a few reminders for the audience. You will all be on mute. You may ask a question by typing in the panel provided. Over to you, Siddhartha.
Thanks, Shashank. I hope I'm audible. I would like to sort of thank everyone for coming in today. I would like to thank NEN for this opportunity to speak to all of you today. The idea today is to share there's this new sort of vibe around, there's this new, some people would call it hype, I won't call it the hype, but the excitement around what's happening in mobile, especially mobile applications. And I want to start with a small disclaimer, which is basically I am not really scared of audiences, but I am at sort of very uncomfortable when I'm talking to a machine and outside sort of there are hundreds of people listening to me. It feels very odd. You're not sure if people sort of are laughing at your joke or getting your presentation or not. The only way I'll know that is finally when sort of your questions come through. And what I've tried to do today is to keep the presentation very, very simple, try and convey what I've sort of really started appreciating in the last year, 2 years, and what sort of in personal and professional life now sort of I'm almost betting on. So I would like to convey the spirit of that and sort of hopefully get you guys excited about this domain too. So I'll get started. So the emerging opportunities in mobile applications. So the discussion today, I'll introduce myself, I'll introduce Spice Labs. I'll sort of tell you about the whole size and excitement that's there in this application ecosystem. Then I'll do a quick overview of this app economy. What are the things that you need to consider, and what are the choices that an entrepreneur or a developer needs to make, right? And sort of how that can help you finally at least start the project that you would like to work on. And then sort of we'll go into Q&A. In the data sort of that I've put up, there's lots of slides with pictures and data. Sort of I've used data from Flurry, from O2, from Think with Google, and GigaOM Pro. So who am I? So I would like to sort of, I was asking Shashank who are the people on the call today, and he told me that sort of a lot of them are fresh out of college, looking at entrepreneurship, trying to figure out what to do. I have about 12-13 years of experience. I came out of IIT Delhi in 2001, and by heart and by DNA, I'm actually a hardcore engineer. And in the last year and a half is where sort of I've completely switched to this business role in mobility. So I hope sort of that resonates with a lot of people, and they'll be more frank and sort of can ask more questions. I am learning a lot extremely fast about this domain. And Spice Labs, the focus is on gaming. So in mobility, there are a lot of things that can be done. I mean, you think of a use case and there's an app for that. But the one that we picked up and focused on is gaming, primarily because today entertainment on mobile is extremely big. It accounts for, I think, 1/3 of the downloads and 2/3 of the revenue across app stores. And basically Spice Labs has chosen gaming, and that's where we've been able to drive users, drive usage, and actually get so much volume that it has made this whole picture sitting out of Noida. We're based out of Noida. Sitting out of Noida, we're able to reach global audiences across US, UK, South Africa, Indonesia. India actually is our 6th largest market. So I mean, it's so global in nature that it's been amazing, sort of this journey of trying out games on mobile. When I started out in Spice, it was 6 years back, and I came from a background where I had the best laptop and I had the worst phone. And the person sort of who had hired me and who wanted this whole excitement of mobile to sink in, there are a couple of anecdotes that I wanted to share. So the first thing that he or I used to discuss was that in 6 to 7 years, this is back in 2006, that 50% of all bits and byte consumption, anything that would be digitized, would happen on mobile. And today, sort of, I think that's becoming true, and it's becoming true very, very rapidly. So whether it's photographs, whether it's entertainment, it's video, it's audio, a lot of that consumption now is happening on the mobile device. So today we call them smartphones, we call them tablets, but they are finally mobile devices on which a lot of that consumption is happening. So it was his claim that this is going to happen, and I used to sort of push him off, saying that, okay, I have my best laptop, I have a separate camera, I have my iPod, and it's got the best music that I need. And in the last 6 years, that sort of whole picture has somewhere completely changed, right? Today, sort of, I don't think for most of you who are coming out of college today, it would be more matter of fact that, yeah, everything is happening on mobile. The cameras today have better lenses than the cameras on the mobile phones have better lenses than the ones that are specialized in some cases, right? So that's actually coming true. And today I frankly carry mobile devices, and I am just sort of using this laptop because I had to create this presentation, and that's how I connect today. And tomorrow, if I can do it from my iPad or from a tablet, then I would actually be doing that. Now, this need for mobility. So there was another question that was asked when I joined. So the question was, what was the first mobile device that you ever had? Now, I thought hard. I had come out of IIT 2001. Mobility was high. I had earned my first salary. So I bought a phone at that time, and I told him, okay, this was the phone that I had bought, and this was my first mobile device. So he told me, no, that's not your first mobile device. The first mobile device that you had was actually a book, which is not an invention that's happened in the last 10 years or last 100 years. It's been here for hundreds of years. It's been there, and a book is actually a mobile device. So the desire for mobility, so book is a form of knowledge sort of put together, bound together, and it's meant to be carried all over the place, right? So there's this whole desire that we have to carry our knowledge, our entertainment with us, and it's inherent in us, and that's the reason why this whole mobility thing will happen. That was the claim, and I mean, it took me 6-7 years and a very hard crash course in the last year and a half to actually start appreciating this. But today, I mean, truly, all of us are slowly moving towards a world where we're going to consume a lot of knowledge and a lot of information on mobile devices. Now, so the mobile, what's the mobile application ecosystem? So we're going to try and look at it from a couple of angles. First of all, it's huge. So I've taken this graph from Flurry. Flurry is an analytics system. What they do is that they give app developers SDKs into which that the app developers can put into their applications and roll out. And I think sort of in November 2012, the number that they hit was 1 trillion events. So those many logs were being generated by people running applications on iOS and Android in November. And I mean, I'm told that almost they've touched sort of 1 billion people doing applications that have Flurry integrated in them. And now I think the number is almost 1.5 or 2 trillion in terms of events that are registered. So that is how much action is happening, and that is how many people sort of who are into downloading and using applications. It's extremely global. This is a slightly older chart because now China has actually overtaken US in terms of the active devices and the number of people connecting to the Flurry systems. but the phenomena is very, very, very global. The penetrations across the globe in all the countries, whether they're developed countries, developing countries, is huge. So number of people connecting to the floody system itself from different sort of applications is more, unique people is more than 200 million today. China, the number is even bigger, and the population is so huge that it's still going to grow fast and go really far. The applications are for everyone, so there might be assumptions about it being for young kids, it being for people with money, it being for people with some particular need, some particular business case, but it's not true. So I mean, this is just a chart of US daily sort of activity on devices, and the penetrations across gender and everything is extremely high. So if I take Spice Labs as an example, we did games, and we did games on BlackBerry. Now usually people believe that sort of BlackBerry would be an app device meant for more the corporate guy doing business things, email and stuff. But frankly, that corporate guy also gets bored. He has to sit through, I don't know whether webinars or not, but he also needs to sit through boring meetings. He has to, excuse me, travel a lot. He has to wait in queues. So he does end up playing games, and that sort of understanding helped us reach so many customers that were not being targeted. That was extremely, extremely sort of lucrative for us and surprising for a lot of people. So mobile internet usage, app usage is extremely high across age, across gender, and across sort of regions and demographics. The consumer behavior is not at all surprising. Slowly and steadily, the amount of time being spent in apps is going up, and it's sort of not just going up steadily compared to television and web browsing, which are, I mean, this is another chart which Flurry had presented in one of their reports. It's growing extremely fast. And if I take another anecdotal example here, we had some issue in downloads with one of our apps, and one of the user feedback was that please give it to me. The app was paid, so there was some payments issue that he was having, and he wrote a very long mail to us saying that, I mean, if you don't give this app to me, I'll have to actually go back and watch television, right? So please save me from television and let me get this app. So we sent a link to him, we gave it to him for free so that he could play that, but sort of it's not a one-off case. I mean, truly it reflects in the numbers that we can see here, that in terms of the amount of minutes being spent on just the mobile is increasing by leaps and bounds. The time is spent all throughout the day, and it's spent on a lot of different types of activities. So it could be games, utilities, social, photo sharing, lifestyle, news, sports, music, calling, a lot of things that people are doing. There is definitely a peak prime time where all this activity goes up a lot, and thankfully people do go to sleep, but all throughout the day. So I mean, any time of the day is app time, frankly. The time is being spent on different things. This chart sort of just draws out how it's being spent. So games take away a huge chunk of what's happening today. Social networking is big and does continue to stay big. Entertainment usually sort of includes movies, videos, a lot of other things. Utilities, productivity apps, health and lifestyle, news, everything is sort of attracting people. And today, if you frankly think of any concept or any need or any utility, there is a good app out there that you can sort of try and work on or download and use, and people do that. Now, so that sort of is just the picture of what excites me. It's part anecdotal, part supported by data. Within the system now, what's happening is that sort of a lot of big money has been made, right? That finally gets us all excited. I've taken some very, very common names. These are the guys who sort of excite us. These are the people that we get attracted towards, and we all know them. So Rovio made Angry Birds, and it's huge, right? all of us know about that. I don't know if all of you are playing Clash of Clans or not. It's a game by Supercell. And today, the last I heard of it, Clash of Clans was doing about $2.4 million of revenue every day. So it's a game that sort of has gone really big, and it's bigger than, I think, most of the big Hollywood movies as they go. The other things that are sort of becoming big today and are very, very visible are the messaging and chat apps, and there's a lot being spent, a lot being earned there. So WhatsApp, WeChat, Line, I'm sure you guys are using one of these apps to communicate with your friends, with your family. But apart from that big money which attracts us, there are a lot of things that we need to understand, figure out, and get into. And I believe that the mobile ecosystem works at all the levels. It's not only at the level of a superstar or an extreme hit that the world works, but sort of if you look at few things clearly, make clear choices, and then do some experiment, you can actually go very far with low costs and sort of really understand the domain and then try and make it big. So if we want to take things step by step, it's good for me to say that, okay, it's spread all over the world, everyone wants to be interested in it. You need to figure out sort of what your target audience would be. So based on age, based on gender, based on location. So the chart on the right actually says that it just compares the active devices with the population of that country. So India and China actually have huge potential for growth, although sort of the numbers even today are not small, but going forward they're just going to grow. I mean, there are no sort of two opinions about it. So I mean, would you want to target people in India? Would you like to target people in other emerging markets? Would you like to target people globally? Right, that's something that you need to think about and figure out and look at. Then sort of today when you're trying to do mobile application, there are multiple platforms that you can look at. There's Android, there's iOS, there's BlackBerry, there's Windows, there's Nokia with their J2ME Asha phones, and there are others on different scales, different levels, which are still out there. And you can look at the market share that these guys have. Android is the biggest today in terms of the user base, in terms of number of installs and everything. iOS in terms of dev payouts is huge. Android is still to catch up with them. BlackBerry is trying to come back into its own. It still has a huge install base, but somewhere sort of with developers and with a lot of people, it's lost out. It's sort of fallen off from the high pedestal it was at one stage. Windows is trying to become the third platform of choice, and Nokia believes that their J2ME Asha platform is going to be the next billion, 2 billion reach phone. Each platform has its reach, has its advantages. Each ecosystem is extremely big. Each ecosystem has its own cost of entry, but they are available to you, and they're all sort of trying to vie for entrepreneurs and developers' attention. Apps, again, sort of what domain, what interest would you like to address or cater to is something that should be clear to you, and you need to think about it. So apart from the other internet and television thing that we looked at earlier, there are a lot of things that people do around apps on their device, including making calls, checking, writing emails, messaging, right, reading books. So there are using the camera to take photographs, and there are multiple app choices that can be made around this, right? So what is it that you think you would want to do? If you've chosen a target audience, if you've chosen sort of the platform that you would like to go after, if you've chosen the applications that you would like to build, the final question for any entrepreneur is, how am I going to try and earn sort of the money from this? The First thing that sort of a lot of people today do is using ad support through a lot of ad networks. So banners, interstitials, video ads are run through ad networks like AdMob, InMobi, Millennial Media, and these have helped sort of people earn a lot of money. There are a lot of challenges here in terms of fill rate, in terms of negotiating the right sort of rates, getting the right ad for your kind of content. There is obvious user challenges, basically because users would not always sort of appreciate ads in their app. So how you integrate or how you plan out the integration is also very, very important. Another challenge with advertisements is that today, in case of, let's say, television ad, it's more an impression. So if you show an ad for that slot, you need to pay. In case of mobility, it's usually performance-driven advertising. So it is important that the user actually takes some action on that ad. He clicks on that ad, or you're able to actually convert that user into a lead or an install. Now, these things sort of make the whole picture extremely sort of hard to run, but this is one of the options that a lot of people use. And Spice Labs is an example that's sort of using 95% of our revenues come from ad-supported content, and it's clearly sort of something that's growing. But the real money on app stores, actually almost 4 or 5 times of what is generated through advertisements actually comes from freemium or premium content. So freemium content is where you give out your apps for free, like ad-supported content maybe, but then you try and charge people for some service that you're doing or giving to them additionally. So it could be a level up, it could be some special virtual good, it could be some sort of extra service functionality that otherwise will not be able to be available to the customer. Premium is paying for it upfront, so the person can only download the app if he pays for it. So this model also sort of could be one time or subscription. So a lot of magazines run on subscription model. A lot of other services where there's a monthly cycle to the content, there is fresh cycle content available every day. Subscription is a model that can work really well. A lot of cloud services these days are coming up wherein the application itself is free, but the service running at the back end, which is providing you, let's say, backups, which is providing you with some extra information around the things that you're using. And it's the cloud service that is finally charged for. One of the biggest examples for this would be Dropbox. Although it's led by the desktop model, at a lot of levels, basically the mobility piece of it is also decently big now. Beyond that, basically, there's a lot of activity in terms of custom application development today for enterprises, for brands, for a lot of content. It could be for media channels, for a lot of people. Everyone today wants to be on the mobile, and to be on the mobile they sort of need their current applications, their current setups, or new applications, new form of sort of communication with users. And for this, basically a lot of custom application development, pure services type of models are growing. And in the last couple of years, the number of companies doing pure services on mobile has actually grown pretty big. So earlier it used to be a side function, it used to be a smaller function, but now there are pure mobile services companies running around and sort of they're growing huge. I know of 5 or 6 companies where the strength is sort of more than 500 people per company, right? Sorry, just give me a second. Now, basically, a lot of times there's this term that's used, which is this app gold rush. Now, my belief is that applications are not necessarily a gold rush. It's a huge, this whole ecosystem is a huge piece of fertile land. And you need to find sort of your patch to grow your idea and make money. And it's genuinely possible. So if you make your choices around app stores, platforms, target audience, the category that you want to go after, the business model that you want to build, you will really find that sort of through experiments, The experiments are possible because, according to me, the cost of entry is extremely low. I mean, if we had to set up a hotel or if we had to set up a restaurant, there are a lot of things that go in, and as developers and entrepreneurs, this is a very, very, very fertile land. It's so huge. The cost of entry is so low that if you're ready to think through your initial choices, put out something, experiment, learn from user feedback, and from whatever you learn, you improve, you evolve your product, it should grow and it should have the possibility of making good money. Basically, that's about it from me for today. So I mean, I can go over anything else that you might want me to cover again, or we could sort of jump straight to Q&A. But I'll sort of leave the slide before this in front of you for a while we do Q&A, because for me, mobile apps, the essence is this. So it's not a gold rush. For me, it's an opportunity where anyone can experiment, learn things, and then sort of as they evolve, they have a very good chance of finding success. Right, over to you, Shashank.
Let's begin with the question answer round. The first question is from Hafiz Mohammed. He asks, what are the main constraints for a startup firm in mobile application development?
See, the main concern, it depends on what you're trying to do. So, I mean, if you're trying to do services, it's a different thing. If you're trying to do something in terms of a product, then it's different. So, I'll try and sort of segregate the two and then try and answer this question. So for services, I mean, you need to generate business, you need to find clients, and then you need to make sure that you can find the right talent to deliver it cost effectively. Right, and I think this is not as hard as it might sound. I mean, a lot of people are actually doing it and doing it very, very successfully, and there's a huge potential for growth here. If you're trying to do your own product, there are multiple challenges. The choices that I've put in front of you are actually your challenges in themselves. So the ecosystem is so huge. Everything that I've put there as an advantage in sort of turn is also a very confusing choice, and going after anything and everything is not usually the answer. So as a startup, you need to make your choices, you need to be patient, and you need to sort of continuously experiment and understand what the customer for you wants from your product, right? So you need to put out your first version, your second version of the product and see how it does in the market, how customers react to it, sort of what do they give back to you as feedback. And it's not just what they write on the App Store in reviews or write back to you on mail. You need to sort of integrate with systems like Flurry to understand how they're using your apps. Are they coming in every day? Are they coming sort of every few hours? Are they getting to all the features or not? Are they using it the way that you would have thought they would use it? And if you start doing that, you'll definitely find sort of growth in your users, and you should be able to overcome whatever challenges come your way.
The next question is from Kamal. He asks, do you think m-commerce will be profitable in India anytime soon? What is the percentage of people who are doing mobile payments in India? And if not India, which other countries have large mobile payments going on?
Okay, so m-commerce is a hard question to answer. I mean, if you need to say quickly, it depends on the time frames that people are putting into that. So right now, even e-commerce is getting worked out, right? I don't think anyone, they've grown big, but no one is actually highly profitable. I mean, if they're profitable at all. So m-commerce, whether it's going to take the lead, it's going to change around and it's going to be better and more profitable, I don't think that's going to happen too soon. In terms of payments, there are a lot of experiments that are going on. Offhand, I don't have the list or the percentage of people doing it. In India, I'm told sort of that regulations are hard to work around. It's opening up slowly, but there are still a lot of issues around the banking and the financial organization, sort of the regulations, understanding them, living by them, and then trying to get to the customer. So it's going to take some time, but a lot of people are trying to work on it and figure it out. In terms of emerging markets, I think Southeast Asia, Africa in particular, I have some sort of information and knowledge about Africa, where there have been huge sort of things that are being done in case of payments. M-Pesa and other schemes, sort of they're working and they're working really well. In terms of payments, US, Europe, they have different systems from all the emerging worlds. There are a lot of things that are being tried out, from virtual currencies to payment mechanisms, right? So these systems are going to be very, very different across all the countries. Payment in particular, because of the amount of regulation, if you're sort of looking at that domain, you would find that most of the companies sort of have strengths in certain areas, except for one or two that have grown big and are trying to still figure things out. Most of the groups are restricted to that particular geography because of all these regulations and things that need to go in place. And India, it will take some time. It will take some time, but offline I can try and get you a list of people who are trying to work on this. There are a lot of exciting companies who are trying to figure out payments, especially because let's say even as a person, let's forget in-commerce, as a gaming company, in-app has a lot of value. And what happens today is that in India, trying to collect money from someone, even if he's willing to pay, is extremely hard. So credit card penetrations are extremely low. Operator integrations are hard, both in terms of business, in terms of technical integrations, and in terms of the demands of scale. So it's not possible for any and every developer to do that. So a lot of companies have come up which are trying to sort of create layers between operators and game developers. We're working with a couple of them. Sort of they've argued out and they've sort of figured out better rates of returns also for us. So payment is a pretty broad spectrum, and there are certain things in India which are exciting and I think which will happen quickly. So in-app payments in gaming might be one of them. Others will take time, and globally it's a different picture in each and every geography.
Kavindra has the next one. How much do you think is the cost of building an Android app, not taking into account the other logistics?
So Android actually has lowered the bar a lot. So I'm assuming you already have a laptop. I'm assuming sort of you're already trained in Java, and creating an account on Android App Store. I mean, the utilities and tools are all free. You could be up and running with your first Hello World in less than half a day, from downloading everything to doing anything and everything. A lot of code samples, and it depends on the kind of app that you're trying to build. Let's say if you're trying to build an RSS reader, you want to sort of read RSS feeds, I would say a decent developer who has at least a year of programming experience can have that app up and running and tested within a week, 15 days at most. You can map the costing from that, and to release onto the App Store, to do better graphics, to sort of build a UX. So onto the App Store actually is not expensive from Google. It's about $25 to open the account and then upload it, link it to a Google Wallet. The UX and graphics is something that you need to figure out. So if you can get that done cheaply, if you have friends who can do it for you, if you yourself have a good sense of it, then it's not that bad. Otherwise, that is something that, let's say in gaming, we invest into a lot, right? So then it depends completely on the complexity of the app that you're trying to build. So 10 teams of 10, 20 people could be working on a single project trying to sort of build something which is very, very complex, including backends. But if you're trying to do a very simple game or a very simple applications, you can have a very, very quick turnaround.
Vikram has the next query.
It's going to be hard for me to put an exact number. Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Srishant.
Vikram has the next question. Which is the best platform to share an idea and develop apps jointly?
Okay. I think the reason sort of I put Android on top is basically because it's the actually the easiest platform to create your app on, and if you're trying to collaborate with a lot of people, it's quite open. It's quite easily accessible. But otherwise, it depends on the kind of resources and stuff that you have, the kind of technical and background you have. So if you're a guy who sort of has done a lot of .NET, is comfortable with the kind of programming interface that Windows is giving, you could try that. If you're comfortable, you have access to Mac machines, iOS devices, then you can try it on the iOS devices. The developer community on all the platforms is quite huge, but according to me, the lowest barrier to entry and the most freedom that you get from a platform would be from Android, and collaboration also because of that reason should be the easiest and the best on Android.
Rahul Sharma has this question coming up for you. How much revenue one can make through app ads? As in, how many clicks result in what revenue, and which is the most lucrative SDK to use for ads?
Okay, so it's a perfectly good question. There's no direct or good answer. See, right now there are almost I think 15, 20 ad net, it could be a lot more actually. So I mean, we've integrated with 15, 20 ad networks. I would recommend working with decently large ones, InMobi, AdMob, iAds if you're doing iOS. Apart from that, Millennial Media, AdPhonic, there are multiple ad networks. They all offer, so in India we serve Adequity. All of them sort of offer different values in terms of ease of technical integration, in terms of the values, the dashboards that they can provide to you. So I mean, it'll be a choice, but you'll need to experiment with 3 or 4. If you're trying it out for the first time, I could recommend AdMob and InMobi. They work across platforms. I mean, they're going to be the easiest to integrate. But there are other ad networks which are sort of pushing really hard from India, like VServe and Adequity, which would provide you with better support, better integrations, and better values if you can do more numbers. Click rates and CPCs, the value for a click, that varies a lot, both by geography, by the volumes that you're able to provide, and by the ad networks. So you can see click rates varying from a cent per click to 10, 12 cents a click. Right, so surprisingly, let's say as we learned, South Africa was very high on click rates. There are times in which uh, you get campaigns where click rates go really high, and usually when we are able to work closely with the ad networks at certain volumes, it's possible to leverage better value out. If you're doing it on an open system, usually it would not be that high. You would get whatever are sort of campaigns are allocated by the systems automatically. One particular SDK is not going to be the best idea. Even when you're starting out today, AdMob, InMobi, everyone offers mediation. What mediation means is that you can bundle 2 or 3 SDKs, create 2 or 3 accounts, and then from the back end, you can choose how much bandwidth to allocate to whom. Right, and you don't have to do too much work for this. The ad networks like AdMob or InMobi provide the service by default. So you could, let's say, put in AdMob SDK, you can put in InMobi SDK, you can put in Millennial Media's SDK, you can put in VServe's SDK, you can put in Adequity's SDK, you can put in SmartO's SDK. And what you can do from the AdMob or InMobi backend or Smarto backend is that you can choose how much bandwidth you want to, or how much traffic you want to allocate to which ad network, right? And in advertising, before you sort of try and answer these technical things, you need to figure out how much impressions are you able to generate. It's a world where truly million is small change, right? So I mean, if you're not getting there, then it's going to be hard for you to try and monetize that. Everyone sort of wants to hear numbers in tens of millions or hundreds of millions when you're doing advertising, right? So you need to also figure out how you're going to get enough usage to generate bigger numbers to get good values for whatever you're trying to do.
Vivek Kandukar wants to start programming in mobile games. He wants to learn from you which is a good source of information to begin with.
Okay, so if you want to do gaming, there are a lot of sources of information. There are a lot of sort of code pieces, graphics, and a lot of things that are available. It depends on what you're aiming for, because gaming in itself is a very wide scope of things. You might want to do 3D games, 2D runners, you might want to do puzzles, you might want to do something which is specific to a particular role-playing games. It depends on what you have in your mind, and based on that, when you start searching, you'll find a lot of sources of information. Today, in terms of development, it's also not necessary that you target Android or you target iOS. You could actually use a lot of gaming platforms that are becoming available. So you could go after Cocoa's 2D to develop your game. You could use Corona Labs SDK to develop a game. You could use a platform like Unity to develop an extremely sort of high quality 3D game. So it would depend on what kind of a game you're trying to build. Let's say if you wanted to build a Sudoku, I would say you could build it pretty well on Android directly. You might not need too much external help other than the developer support site of Android. If you're trying to do a very high quality 3D games, then there are a lot of forums, and you should use a platform like Unity. People who are just starting out, a lot of platforms are free, but once you start earning money, then they have these different pricing models that you can try and work out. But in today's world, most of the SDKs are definitely free to try out, and you can even release and use those SDKs till you start making money. So those guys will not charge you anything till you make money. So choose the domain or the genre that you want to go after, and accordingly either the platform or the gaming engine that can help you deliver that product well.
Venkatraman believes that the future of mobile applications is going to be hybrid apps or web app embedded in a mobile application. What is your take on this view?
Okay, so that's definitely possible. I mean, HTML5 and the web is growing by leaps and bounds. It's as Spice Labs or Siddharth, I've sort of settled this debate for now, and also because we are in gaming, we are actually extremely focused more towards native app, towards the quality and the experience that a game requires, and building and focusing on that. But we do keep an eye on HTML5 for cross portability for a lot of small pieces that could come through. In terms of hybrid apps, that's something that I'm not too sure about. I mean, we'll wait and watch, and I'm sure it might happen. Right now, my view is that sort of if I create a website, then I've got a visitor, right? I mean, this is something that was pretty recently discussed on the web, also in a conference. But if I've got an app, I've got a customer, right? I've got someone I've got a hook to. So apps today have better experience. Apps today have better reach for the developer to the customer. So in the short run, at least, I don't see that picture changing. And Facebook's sort of recent focus on native apps away from HTML5 was proof of that. But in the long term, we'll wait and watch. And I think I don't I can't disagree completely with what you're saying. It's possible that sort of things are going to move towards a mix of native and web definitions.
This next question is from Rahul Sharma. He wants to know, how do you market your apps? It seems that you have a number of apps, so how do you go about getting all of them visibility?
Okay, so basically one of the challenges that I have not picked up or discussed today is distribution. So once you have a concept, how are you going to get it to the customer? And today, in terms of numbers and the advantages that are there, they get actually quite frankly negated by the fact that there are millions of apps truly today out there on each of the app stores that I've been talking about. So we try and sort of use a mix of strategies. So one is simple sort of, because we've been able to build a certain user base, we try and cross promote our app based on that. We try and use certain social metrics. So Facebook, G+, are pretty strong tools in terms of making sure that, I mean, we get better visibility in the community. This does not work all the time, but sort of through hit and trials, we've learned what works for us, what does not work for us. The app stores themselves have certain dynamics, so certain search queries, certain reviews, recommendations, making sure that they're of good quality, making sure that sort of you time your re-releases, you time your sort of content pieces right, help a lot. And we try and cross leverage our users a lot. So I mean, we were able to do, let's say, a lot of downloads on BlackBerry, on Android, on certain geographies, and then using the cross promotions, or we were able to take it to other apps. And through a bit of virality, we've been able to take things to other users. Now, in terms of ad spends, we've done that a lot. We've found that sort of that is right now more expensive for the kind of content and the revenue model that we have. So free to download ad-based revenue is not pretty, I mean, the equation of pure advertising or model of acquiring customers does not work too well for us. So we've now started sort of working with affiliate networks, with a lot of other developer partners, to try and sort of leverage our user base and their user base together to try and sort of further the downloads of our own apps. And in the long run, the sort of portfolio approach, where instead of having just one game, we have multiple contents out there, it helps in this whole model.
Ali Asgar has an app which he wants to launch on BlackBerry, Windows, iOS, and Android. He wants to know, what is the rough cost of launching all of these four at one go?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand. The application is already ready and it's just a question of launch.
Yeah, he wants to know, what is the cost of launching this app on BlackBerry, Windows, iOS, and Android all at one go?
Frankly, I mean, I'm not sure I've understood the question, but I'll still try and answer it. And if it's not clear, then we can sort of come back to it. In terms of just uploading and releasing the app, most of the app stores don't have any big cost. For Google, the account is created at $25. For iOS, you need to create an account. I think it's about $100 that they charge. I'm not sure of the current rate, but I think it's about $100. On BlackBerry, as far as I remember, these guys don't charge anything right now. Earlier, it was $20 for the account. And on Windows, I think the account that you need to create costs around 5,000 rupees, as far as I remember. That's what I think I signed for. So the cost of just launch is pretty minimal. But in terms of getting the user base, in terms of keeping an eye on all the four platforms, supporting them, you'll need to spend time and effort on that. You will also need to watch out for which app store is working well for you, which is not. upgrading and supporting the app on all platforms, fixing the bugs, those are the costs that are going to be bigger, right? And if you want to actually do marketing spend, you want to build relationship with the App Store guys continuously, maintain those relationships, then those things would take time and effort. But just the launch or the upload and then release to the marketplace is, I think, going to be just about $25 for Google, about $100 for Apple, $100 for Microsoft, and I think zero for BlackBerry as far as I remember. It's just sort of what you need to do post that's going to be sort of something to focus on.
There are a couple of people with a very interesting question to you. They want to know, how do you generate revenue from an app when you're releasing it for free?
Oh, okay. So basically we mostly sort of we're giving out apps for free. But for us, the important part is, one, to get distribution. So we need people to download it. Then we work extremely hard at driving usage. So usage is what drives, once we're able to sort of sustain and grow our usage, we have eyeballs. And today when we do sort of about 5 million monthly active users playing our games decently often enough, right, then we work with the advertisers. There are in-game advertisements, there are cross promotions with other guys, right, n number of ways in which we work with advertisers and ad networks to earn revenue. So for Spice Labs, if you wanted to understand our business model, it's free to download games. We focus a lot on distribution, but more important than distribution, we focus on usage and retention to try and get as many eyeballs as we can into our games. And then we work with ad networks and advertisers to try and earn money. And for most part it works. It works reasonably well.
Krish has this next question. Can you name some of the firms which can implement the app ideas, where the whole concept can be outsourced and the desired app got designed?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, often, I mean, it depends completely on your budget. This is finally India. So most of the outsourcing that's happening all over the world is happening right to India, or actually to Russia, sort of, I think, other places where work goes. But it depends. Everyone sort of specializes into different things, right? The companies out of Bangalore, the companies sitting out of Noida. You want names of people who do this? So, okay, so the closest I have, mostly because it's sort of run by my friends, but it'll become more marketing exercise for them. It's called D by DX. It's been acquired by a larger firm these days. These guys do it. We outsource our work a lot of times to companies in Pune and Jaipur. Just give me a second. There's one sort of group, but now they've grown pretty big out of Bangalore. I'm just trying to sort of remember the name if I can get it. Otherwise, sort of I'll share it around. But there's something that sort of I can help you figure out offline also. I'm sorry, I just sort of have not got the name directly in my head. But if you've got a decent budget, there are enough people with the capability to design and develop apps and deliver them to you. Most of the brands, I mean, that's how they work. So I mean, the entire India Times effort is done through vendors. Let's say if NDTV wants an app, it's done through vendors. If Make My Trip app was done, it was done through vendors. So this should not be an issue at all.
We're taking our last two questions. This one coming up is from Vidit. He wants to know whether the piracy of apps is being a big drawback and is increasing.
See, so piracy is an issue, but there are multiple ways to handle that now. For us, actually, it's not that big an issue currently, because I mean, as long as if our app or our APK or binary is taken as is and distributed further, it actually helps us because we're doing free content. But for paid content, there are enough models, enough licenses, and a lot of app stores are doing a lot to try and help out with this. But the fact of the matter is that it's not just direct piracy, but sort of your concept being cloned and things like that also matter, and that does happen. But it's not that bad that sort of you don't even start, right? I mean, if you start growing that big, that this becomes a serious issue, then you should handle it. If you're not at that stage, or if you're just focusing, I mean, if you have already grown that big and you see the numbers sort of being different, let's say from app stores, you're getting 10 paid downloads, but on your backend servers, you see hundreds of users using your app, then it's something to be concerned about. Or if you're focusing on creating solutions around this. Otherwise, I would recommend not to worry about this too much. Focus on IP creation, focus on sort of the content that you're doing. And once you get to a certain stage, then sort of try and take this further. Shashank, I'll just sort of put up the last slide that you wanted me to put up before we take the last question.
The last question is from Ronak Patel. He wants to know, what is the future of Windows-based apps? Will it be as good as Android or iOS?
Okay, so it's a hard question to answer, but the race is not for first and second position in case of BlackBerry and Windows, as far as I understand. It's mostly for the third place, and you can sort of Google around basically what people think would be the market share by 2015, what it was 2 years back, what it is today, and what's going to be in 2 years and 4 years. But the belief is that Android is going to lead the pack, iOS is going to follow, and then the third position is what others are fighting for at best. But there's one thing that I would like to clarify. See, I mean, we do and we make good money on BlackBerry, although people don't believe in that. A lot of the reason why we make money there is basically because BlackBerry even today has an install base of almost 70-75 million people, and the developer focus there is almost zero. So I'm not saying that sort of this is going to hold true for the next 10 years, but there's a huge window and we've exploited that window in the last couple of years. And the same might hold true for Windows. So I mean, the number of developers focusing there and the number of people who get on board, right, might actually mean that you can drive a lot of values from there. So each ecosystem in its absolute terms is quite big. So don't always look at the relative numbers. So even if Android and iOS end up having 80% of the share, and let's say Windows has 10% share of the market, the 10% is still going to be quite big. So don't write it off just because it's third or it's very small compared to Android. In itself, it might be a big enough ecosystem for you to try and explore.
Thank you very much, Siddhartha, for that interesting session. Thank you to all our attendees for participating in the webinar. We are glad that questions kept coming in, but due to a lack of time, we are unable to answer them all. Please do send in your feedback and suggestions to us at eclub@nenglobal.org. Also, if you found the session interesting, feel free to blog or post about it. The recorded version of the webinar will be available on www.youtube.com/user/eclubnen online by tomorrow. Also, join us for our next webinar on how to balance BYOD or bring your own device benefits and risk by Mr. Manjunath M. Gowda, the co-founder and CEO of i7 Networks on 28th of August at 3 p.m. Thank you once again and have a nice evening.
Thank you.